Britain's politicians claim to care about free speech. That's hard to believe for a number of reasons, not least the fact that Palestine Action has been prescribed as a terrorist organisation. So, if I choose to wear a t-shirt with the logo Palestine Action on it, I could face 6 months in prison. If I write the sentence, I support Palestine Action on X, I'm committing a serious offence, and again, could face up to 6 months at His Majesty's leisure. This is, to any sane person, ridiculous. It's not only unjust and undermines a basic liberty, but is also a complete waste of police resources. And now those seeking to defend the rights of Palestine Action and its supporters have an unlikely ally, the US State Department. The Telegraph reports this. Sarah Rogers, Donald Trump's free speech czar, she's also Under Secretary of State, said the arrests in regards to Palestine Action were, quote, censoring free speech and did more harm than good. More than 2,000 people have been arrested for expressing support for Palestine Action since it was prescribed as a terror group in July last year. Ms. Rogers, the US State Department's Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy, said that the public should be allowed to say they back the group. I would have to look at each individual and each prescribed organisation, she told Semaphore. I think if you support an organisation like Hamas, then depending upon whether you're coordinating, there are all these standards that get applied. This Palestine Action Group, I've seen it written about. I don't know what it did. I think if you just merely stand up and say, I support Palestine Action, then unless you are really coordinating with some violent foreign terrorist, I think that censoring that speech does more harm than good. If I said that on BBC Questions, I might be cancelled. Not even by the right, by the centrists. The Labour Party, The Observer, how dare you? Sonia Soda. They'd come after me. How dare you? But then we've got somebody at the State Department who is serving under the most right-wing president that's occupied the Oval Office, certainly in my lifetime, certainly I think in the last 100 years, probably ever. Maybe somebody might say Teddy Roosevelt, he was very racist. You might say Nixon. This guy's pretty bad. Even she's saying this is crazy. Unlike a lot of right-wingers in this country, it seems at least some of their fellow travellers on the other side of the Atlantic are vaguely consistent in defending free speech, which I suppose is always likely, given it's a cornerstone of their constitution rather than just being a vibe, as is the case in this country. In Britain, for the right, free speech is just a way of owning people, right? But when it's your side censoring, you don't say anything. Free speech, just for the people I agree with, doesn't work like that. Kieran, do we need a left-wing campaign for free speech in this country?
I think we do. Well, I mean, I don't know if we need a campaign, but I think that freedom of speech, saying something like I'm a free speech absolutist has been completely and utterly sullied by and abused by the likes of Elon Musk, who says he's a free speech absolutist, buys X in order to reflect that wisdom and those principles, and obviously does everything. I've always considered myself, I've always thought that the only sane position for the left to take really is one that does accept free speech absolutism, maybe short of only direct incitement, perhaps, but short of that, I think I would count myself, willing to hear a great deal of very unpleasant things. Simply to maintain the ability to say all of the pleasant things and all of the things that I do agree with, not sound too much like a pound shot Voltaire. And I think that the left maybe has failed on some of this. We've had a big backlash against woke and so on. And I think all of that has been litigated and there's been a lot of discourse on it, not least, in our own Novara over the past kind of year or two. So I don't want to pick low-hanging fruit or tread ground that's already been trodden, but you're absolutely right that there is, however flawed it is, there is this kind of difference in the American system and in the way that Americans tend to treat free speech in their discourse versus the United Kingdom, where it seems that everything is up for grabs. we don't have a written constitution. Well, we do have a written constitution. I can hear Peter Hitchens complaining in my head. We do have a written constitution. We don't have a codified constitution, which obviously is, I think, the key nodal difference. And I would be in favour of much more stringent laws around free speech, preventing the kind of prohibition of Palestine action that we've seen over the weaponization of proscription of a peaceful movement and a peaceful group at the behest of the Israel lobby. And it's just one example of the kind of victims that you will have when you have such open and free legislation around, or kind of lack of systemic control around freedom of speech. So I definitely think that the left should hold as close to a free speech absolutist position as possible. And the hypocrisy of the centre, you're right, Sonia Soda and her ilk, is staggering, but I don't really believe those people believe in anything, actually.
Yeah, they sort of believe in their little talking points to get them on TV, and that's about it, Go on, you was going to say something, Kieran, before I rant. Let me have my final rant, but you go first.
Well, no, just to echo what you're saying, Eric, they're weather vanes. They blow with the wind. They'll blow with the wind. What's acceptable in 2017 is no longer acceptable in 2024, if only enough of their peers say it's not acceptable. It is a hive mind in the worst possible sense.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, really, to watch it as you get older. I mean, when you're young, you sort of think people arrive at their own conclusions independently, but actually to see, as you say, it's a hive mind. The centrist hive mind, it's all status games, following one another, It's like what's that horror movie, with the worm and they're all taped to one another? I'm going to sound the human centipede. It's like the human centipede of consent. They said it, then they said it, then they said Dan Hodges and Sonia Soda, then this person and this person and this person, and they all say they end up saying the same thing. 5 years' time, they'll all be saying, Mark Carney. I have to agree with Mark Carney thought with Anglophone characteristics for a new era, right? Xi Jinping thought, but for an Anglophone context. They'll agree with that because the human centipede of centrism told them to. On the free speech thing, I couldn't agree more. Very, very important. I think we've made plenty of mistakes on that, I have to be honest, over the last 15 years. Because, to be quite frank, the right in this country do not care about it. It's a joke for them. For them, it's a way of owning the left. Not for all of them, but for many people, it's just a way of owning the left. And I think we don't have that. We don't have that constitutional tradition in this country, right? I can say what I like. It's written down here, tiny document, look it up, read it. People think they can do that, and the police go, actually, no, you can't. People don't know their rights because guess what? In terms of a codified constitution, they don't have any.